Welcome to Voice of English. My name is Adam, and for most of my life, English was a wall that stood between me and the world. I remember sitting in front of my computer, watching videos I couldn't understand, reading comments I couldn't reply to, and hearing songs that sounded beautiful, but meant nothing to me. I felt small, invisible, and somehow left behind. At school, English had always been a subject I feared. Whenever the teacher asked me to read aloud, my hands would sweat and my voice would shake. I knew the words in my head, but they refused to come out. Every mistake felt like a punch to my confidence. I started to believe I simply wasn't good at languages. Slowly, I stopped trying. But deep inside, there was always a quiet dream. A dream to speak English fluently, to express myself clearly, to sound confident and free. I wanted to travel, make friends from different countries, and maybe one day teach others what I had learned. Yet every time I tried, the same fear whispered, "You can't do it. You're alone." And in a way, that was true. I didn't have English-speaking friends. I didn't have money for classes or a foreign teacher. My small town barely had anyone who could help me practice. I was completely on my own. Many nights, I sat by my window, watching planes pass in the distance, wondering how people in other parts of the world could speak this language so easily. It almost felt like magic. One day, I watched a video of a man who learned English by himself. He spoke with confidence, even though he never left his country. His story hit me deeply. He said something that stayed in my heart. Greater than sign. If no one helps you, become your own teacher. That sentence changed everything. I realized that maybe I didn't need a perfect environment or expensive lessons. Maybe all I needed was time, patience, and belief in myself. English wasn't some secret skill. It was a habit built little by little. So that night, I made a promise to myself. No more waiting. No more fear. From that moment, I would learn English alone. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew why. I wanted to open doors, to understand the world, and to find my voice. It was a small decision, just a single thought before sleep, but it was the beginning of everything. I didn't realize it then, but that one quiet promise would change my entire life. Because every big change begins with a small decision. The first days of my journey were not easy. I didn't even know where to start. I opened grammar books, watched videos, and listened to podcasts. But everything felt too difficult. My pronunciation was terrible, my vocabulary was tiny, and my motivation disappeared quickly. I almost gave up before I had even started. Then one evening, as I scrolled through my notes, I realized something powerful. I was focusing on results, not on habits. I wanted to be fluent tomorrow, but I wasn't ready to learn today. I was measuring myself against others instead of believing in my own small steps. That night, I made a new rule. Don't chase perfection, chase progress. I started to change the way I thought about learning. English was not a monster to fight. It was a friend to spend time with. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be curious. Every mistake became a lesson, not a failure. Every new word was a tiny victory. I learned that mindset is more important than materials. So I built a simple routine: 10 minutes of listening, 10 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of speaking to myself in front of the mirror. I set small, clear goals like, today I will learn 5 new words, or I will write 3 sentences about my day. They seemed small, but they kept me moving forward. Slowly, I started to feel proud of my efforts. Of course, there were still bad days. Days when I felt tired, lazy, or hopeless. On those days, I reminded myself of one truth: no one becomes fluent overnight. Learning a language is like growing a tree. You don't see progress every day, but deep inside, something is growing. Patience is your strongest teacher. I also started to think differently about mistakes. Before, I was afraid to speak because I didn't want to sound stupid. Now, I realize that every mistake is proof that I'm learning something new. Babies fall hundreds of times before they walk, yet they never stop trying. So why should I? This new mindset gave me energy. I no longer felt like a lost student. I felt like an explorer discovering a new world. I began to enjoy English. The sound of it, the rhythm of it, even the challenge of it. My heart started to believe what my mind already knew. I can do this. From that moment, learning alone didn't feel lonely anymore. I wasn't fighting against English. I was walking beside it, one step at a time. Because once you build the right mindset, everything else becomes possible. The journey was still long, but now I was finally ready to enjoy it. Once my mindset changed, I faced a new question. How can I learn English without anyone around me? I had no native speakers nearby, no English classes, and no one to correct my mistakes. But instead of seeing that as a problem, I decided to turn it into an opportunity. If I couldn't go to an English-speaking country, I would bring English to my home. I started with simple things. I changed my phone language to English. At first, it was confusing. I couldn't even find the settings button. But after a few days, I began to understand. Every time I unlocked my phone, I was learning new words. Delete, update, settings, storage. These small words slowly became part of my daily life. My phone had become my first English teacher. Then I turned to movies and series. I began watching short clips with English subtitles. I didn't just watch. I listened carefully, repeated lines, and tried to understand the emotions behind each sentence. At first, I could only catch 1 or 2 words. But little by little, I started to understand whole phrases. I learned pronunciation, expressions, and rhythm, things no textbook could teach me. Music became another tool. I would play English songs and read the lyrics at the same time. I sang out loud, even when I sounded terrible. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was using my voice. Music made English emotional. It connected the language with feeling. Reading was harder, but I found a trick. I started with children's books and short news articles. Simple words, short sentences, but full of meaning. I kept a small notebook and wrote down new words every day. I didn't memorize them mechanically. I used them in sentences like, "Today I feel grateful," or "The weather is beautiful." This way, new vocabulary became personal. It became mine. One of my favorite discoveries was journaling in English. Every night before bed, I wrote a few lines about my day. I didn't worry about grammar. I just wrote freely. Sometimes I wrote about my dreams, sometimes about my problems. English slowly became my language of thought. I began thinking in English without realizing it. To practice speaking, I used my phone's recorder. I would talk for 2 minutes about any topic and then listen to my voice. At first, it was painful to hear my mistakes, but soon it became a game. I tried to sound better each time. Soon, my room didn't feel like a normal room anymore. It felt like a small English world. My walls had sticky notes, my desk had English books, my phone spoke in English, and even my thoughts began to change shape. I realized something powerful. You don't need to live in London or New York to live in English. You just need to let English live in you. And that's how I built my own classroom, inside my home, inside my heart. After creating my small English world, I realized something important. I was learning a lot, but I still wasn't speaking. I could understand videos, read stories, even write short paragraphs. But when I tried to speak out loud, my tongue froze. My brain went blank. I felt like I was trapped between what I knew and what I could say. That fear of speaking had been with me since school. Every time I opened my mouth, I imagined people laughing at my accent or my mistakes. But this time, there was no classroom, no teacher, no one to judge me. It was just me and my voice. So I asked myself, what am I afraid of now? That question changed everything. I began to practice speaking alone. Every morning I stood in front of the mirror and talked to myself. I described my plans for the day. Today, I will clean my room. Then I will watch an English video. It felt strange at first, but after a few days, it became normal. The mirror became my audience, and my reflection became my friend. Then I discovered a technique called shadowing, listening to an English speaker and repeating their words immediately, copying their tone, rhythm, and pronunciation. I started with short YouTube clips and motivational speeches. I paused, repeated, and tried to sound exactly like the speaker. It was difficult, but it made me feel powerful, like I was borrowing the confidence of their voice. I also began to record myself speaking for 2 or 3 minutes every day. I talked about simple topics, my goals, my favorite food, my memories. When I listened to the recordings, I noticed my mistakes, but I also noticed progress. My sentences became smoother, my pronunciation clearer. I was no longer whispering. I was speaking. Sometimes I would pretend to give short speeches in English. I would walk around my room, gesturing with my hands as if I were speaking to an audience. It felt funny, but it worked. The more I practiced, the less I cared about how I sounded. The fear started to disappear. One night, after months of practice, I joined an online voice chat in English. My heart was beating fast, but I reminded myself, you have practiced for this moment. When I finally spoke, my voice shook. But I spoke. The person on the other side understood me. For the first time, English wasn't just a dream. It was a bridge connecting me with another human being. That day, I learned something beautiful. Fluency is not about speaking perfectly. It's about speaking bravely. From then on, I spoke every day, while walking, cooking, cleaning, even thinking. English became the sound of my daily life. The fear that once controlled me was gone, replaced by excitement. Because the truth is, you don't learn to speak by waiting. You learn to speak by speaking. And the moment you stop being afraid of your voice, that's the moment English truly becomes yours. After weeks of progress, I started to believe that nothing could stop me. I was reading, listening, and speaking every day. English was no longer just a subject. It had become part of my life. But then, something unexpected happened. I began to lose energy. At first, it was small. One night I said, "I'm too tired to study today." Then it became 2 nights, then a week. Slowly, the excitement I once felt started to fade. My phone lessons felt boring, my motivation disappeared, and my mind whispered, "Maybe you'll never be fluent. Maybe this is too hard." This was the hardest part of learning alone. Not grammar, not pronunciation, but staying consistent when no one is watching. There were no teachers to push me, no classmates to compete with. Only me. And sometimes, I was my biggest enemy. One morning, I sat in front of my notebook and stared at a blank page. I almost gave up. I thought, why am I doing this? No one cares if I learn English or not. But then I remembered the promise I made to myself, the night I decided to learn English alone. I remembered that small dream inside me, the one that said, I want to understand the world. So instead of quitting, I changed my strategy. I realized I didn't always have to study hard. I just had to study smart. On lazy days, I listened to English songs while lying in bed. When I didn't feel like writing, I watched English vlogs. When I couldn't concentrate on reading, I repeated short sentences aloud. It didn't matter how small the effort was. What mattered was that I didn't stop. I also learned to forgive myself. Some days are good, some days are not. And that's okay. The key is to return, again and again. I started tracking my progress on a small calendar, marking every day I practiced. Seeing that chain of effort grow gave me motivation. It reminded me that even small steps build big results. Whenever doubt came, I turned to inspiration. I watched videos of people who had learned English on their own. I listened to motivational talks. I even watched my own old recordings to see how far I'd come. Each time, I felt a spark of pride, because I was improving, even when I couldn't see it clearly. There was one sentence that kept me strong. Discipline is doing what you must, even when you don't feel like it. I learned that fluency isn't about studying every day with excitement. It's about not giving up when the excitement is gone. It's about showing up for yourself, again and again. And slowly, I did. I rose from laziness, I faced my doubts, and I kept walking forward. Because the real challenge in learning English alone is not the language. It's learning to fight yourself and win. Months passed. The days of struggle, doubt, and small victories began to add up. Without realizing it, something inside me was changing. My English wasn't just improving. I was improving. The person who once felt shy and unsure had slowly become confident and curious. One morning, I opened a YouTube video without subtitles, just to test myself. At first, I expected confusion, but something surprising happened. I understood most of it. Not every word, but enough to follow the story. I smiled quietly, feeling a spark of pride. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The first real sign that my hard work was paying off. Later, I noticed more changes. English words began to appear naturally in my thoughts. When I was cooking or walking, I found myself describing things in English without effort. Sentences flowed in my mind like they belonged there. That was when I realized I wasn't just studying English anymore. I was living it. Writing, too, became easier. My old journal, once full of short and broken sentences, was now filled with long reflections, new words, and even my dreams written in English. Reading what I had written months ago felt like reading the diary of another person. someone who was learning to find their voice. Speaking also transformed. I no longer needed to rehearse every sentence. My voice felt freer, smoother. When I spoke to people online, I no longer panicked over mistakes. I just spoke. Some people even complimented my pronunciation, and that small encouragement meant the world to me. One day, I met a tourist in my town. They asked for directions in English, and without thinking, I answered fluently. It wasn't perfect, but it was real communication, something I once thought was impossible. When they thanked me, I felt a wave of emotion. I realized I had finally crossed the wall that once trapped me. It wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was the result of every small effort, every late-night practice, every word I repeated, every moment I refused to quit. English had become more than a language to me. It was a symbol of growth, of patience, of self-belief. It taught me that when you work in silence, one day your progress speaks for you. Sometimes, I still make mistakes. I still forget words. But now, I don't feel ashamed. I smile, correct myself, and move on, because I know how far I've come. Learning English alone changed my language, yes, but it also changed my mindset, my confidence, and my entire way of seeing the world. And that's when I understood. The greatest reward of learning isn't fluency, it's transformation. And now, my friend, the story comes back to you. Maybe you're sitting where I once was, feeling lost, alone, and unsure if you can really learn English by yourself. Maybe you've tried before and failed. Maybe you think your accent is too strong, your grammar too weak, or your time too limited. I understand, because I was you. I remember those silent nights when I doubted everything. I remember thinking English was only for lucky people, those who could travel abroad, afford teachers, or live in English-speaking countries. But now I know the truth. You don't need perfect conditions. You only need a strong decision. Every expert was once a beginner. Every fluent speaker once struggled to say hello. What changed their life wasn't magic. It was the courage to begin and the discipline to continue. So, if you feel like you're alone in this journey, let me tell you something. You're not. You have your dream, your voice, your heart, and that's enough. You have books, videos, music, and a world of free knowledge waiting for you. You have me and millions of other learners walking the same path. You are part of something bigger, the global voice of learners who refuse to give up. Start small. Watch one video a day, write one sentence in English, speak one line in front of the mirror. Don't worry if it sounds strange. Every word you say is a brick in the foundation of your fluency. Some days you will feel tired. Some days you will doubt yourself. But remember, progress is invisible at first. It's like a sunrise. The darkness fades slowly until, suddenly, everything is bright. Look at me. I started alone, afraid, and uncertain. But step by step, mistake by mistake, I built my confidence, my language, and my future. And if I can do it, so can you. So don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for someone to teach you. Begin now, with the resources you have, the voice you have, the courage you have. Because when you start, something magical happens. English stops being a subject and becomes a part of your life. It opens doors, connects hearts, and gives you a new way to see the world. You are stronger than you think, and your dream is closer than you believe. This is not the end of my story. It's the beginning of yours. This is the voice of English, helping you find your voice even when you're alone.